Hello and welcome to this recorded webinar on developing resilience in yourself and others. It's great to have you here. Many thanks for watching. Firstly, I'd like to congratulate you on taking some time out for yourself, to upgrade yourself, to take some time for you to reflect on some of the things that you may or may not be doing so that you can help develop your resilience and well-being. So sit back, grab a coffee, and just listen for the next 20 to 25 minutes. I hope you find the contents useful. So first of all, let me start by giving you a little introduction to me. So I am Rachel Hewitt-Hall. I am the Managing Director of Excel Communications, a learning and development consultancy. I'm also a qualified psychotherapist, so have a real passion for well-being, resilience, mental health. I'm also a Inside Out role model on the Inside Out leaderboard. If you Google Inside Out leaderboard, you'll find myself and lots of other leaders in business there who are leading the way in smashing the stigma in mental ill health in the business today. So we have been sharing our own experiences of mental ill health with our colleagues in the hope that others will feel that they can do the same. So that's a little bit of an introduction about me and why me in particular talking about resilience. So let's have a look at what we'll be covering in the next 20 or so minutes. So during this session, what we're going to focus on is what is resilience. It's a word that's bandied around a lot these days, but actually what does it really mean? Also, why is resilience so important? Why should you care about resilience? And also how you can develop resilience, not just in yourself, but in your team members as well. So that's what we're going to be looking at in the next 20 odd minutes. So first of all, let's have a look at what is resilience. So these are the Oxford Dictionary definitions. So resilience is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties. In other words, it's a toughness and the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, and they kind of refer to that as elasticity. So resilience is the ability to recover from setbacks, to adapt to change, and to keep going in the face of adversity. It's the fact that at all points in our life, we're going to suffer from setbacks, from disappointments, from challenges, and it's about how we choose to respond to those challenges. That's how we measure our level of resilience. So it's about bouncing back. It's about bouncing back after that challenging call with a customer. It's about bouncing back after you've had a whole day of Zoom calls and you're feeling absolutely exhausted. And it's also potentially having a really challenging conversation. So those are some examples of some of the challenging situations that you might want to bounce back from. So before we get into the content fully, I want to just look at some numbers, and it's very difficult to find global numbers. So I'm afraid that the next few figures are all from the UK, but I think it's a fair representation of how things are across the globe at the moment. So first of all, 30% of the UK workforce have been formally diagnosed with a mental health condition at some point in their lifetime. I think it's probably higher than that, but it's probably not been shared quite so openly. 39%, that's 2 in 5 employees report experiencing mental health symptoms related to work stress, particularly in the last year. And the cost of mental health problems in the UK and workforce is 35 billion, and this is according to research published by the Centre for Mental Health, and those attribute to 10.6 billion in sickness absence, 21.2 billion in reduced productivity at work, so that's presenteeism, and 3.1 billion in replacing staff who leave their jobs because of mental ill health. So it's massive. It's costing businesses a lot, and so it's really important that we're doing something about this to help ourselves and others. But it's not all doom and gloom. Since the lockdown in the UK, happiness levels are up by 11%, everybody. So let's celebrate some small wins. So since lockdown, 11% happiness levels are up, and I'm sure that will continue to rise as things return to some level of the next norm. So now I want to reflect on you and thinking about your own energy levels. So let's look at a battery. Let's use the scenario of a battery. So what do you do when your battery is low on your phone or your laptop? So you probably might panic. You might decide to recharge it if you've got a charger handy. If it's got a low power mode, you might choose to put it onto low power and use this so it lasts a bit longer. Or you might choose to turn it off completely. And actually, we're no different. Our energy levels are no different. It's all about energy. So let's look at your energy right now. So what does a fully charged battery look like? Well, it might be when you've had a good 7 to 8 hours night's sleep. You bounce out of bed feeling really good, that you've been feeling really rested. It might be there's sort of 3 or 4 days into a holiday where you've really started to unwind, you've started to relax, you're enjoying the feeling of no time pressures. And so you're feeling like your batteries are starting to recharge. Or it might be when you've been for a run or you've had a really good workout and those happy hormones are starting to race around your body and you've just got those really good feel good vibes, and also that element of smugness as well. For me, it's about when I'm out in nature with my dog Riley. Walking the dog is when I really start to recharge my batteries and feel much more connected to myself. So what about when your battery is 20% or lower, and you might be limping to the end of a week after a really busy week of Zoom calls? I think we've all got Zoom fatigue at the moment. It might also be towards the end of the day when you've been sat at that camping desk, that temporary camping desk that you've got as you're working from home in the current situations, and you realise that you've not stopped all day and you're just feeling really fatigued. Or it might be that full inbox of emails that you just haven't got round to looking at, and you keep getting notification interruptions from Teams popping up all the time. So it's really important for us to reflect on where our energy levels are and making sure that we're taking time out to recharge our energy levels and recharge our batteries. So for the next couple of minutes, I'd like you to just pause this presentation and just take some time for reflection. So think about, how charged is your battery right now? What percentage would you say it is? And how about your team's energy levels? Are you aware of what their charge level is at the moment? It's very difficult when we're managing remotely to kind of have that felt sense when we're working in the same place as someone. But how aware are you of your team's energy levels at the moment? And also, I think it's really important to think about, are you a power source to your team, or are you a drain to their energy? So just pause this recording now and reflect on those for a moment. So now let's take a look at some resilient people. So think of someone you know who might be really resilient. For me, it's my mum. She's amazing. It doesn't matter what's thrown at her, she just handles it, and she's a really good support mechanism for me. Think about other people in your lives who might be people that you admire, because in the face of adversity, they just always seem to get through no matter what. So let's take some more famous people as a few examples. So let's look at Malala. So Malala is a Pakistani activist for female education and is the youngest Nobel Prize laureate. She was shot by the Taliban on a school bus to try and silence her. And yet she's come through incredible, difficult, challenging times and continues to campaign today. What about Elon Musk? He's the epitome of failing fast. He's not afraid to try and get things wrong. It's all about rockets blowing up. It's about batteries on cars being really poor. His phrase is, failure is not an option. If you're not failing, you're not innovating. So here's someone who thrives on failing fast. And then let's look at Prince Harry. You know, his mother died when he was young. His family have been hounded by the media, and he's been speaking quite candidly about how that's been affecting him and his family. And he's also a huge advocate for mental health. And then we have Oprah. So Oprah has been challenged in her life. She was sexually and has suffered from sexual and racial abuse, but continues to thrive. She's come through that, and she campaigns and is an activist for all things well-being, all things good for the mind, and she's very successful today. So let's have a look at what all of these resilient people have in common. So we work with a partner called Tracom Corp. They're known as the social intelligence company, and they've invested years of research into resilience. So I wanted to take a little bit of a look at the attributes of resilience. So they've looked at how people act and react. And interact, act and interact. So first of all, let's have a look at act. So this is how you handle challenges. So let's look at self-assurance. So this is Malala, so wedded to her cause that she continued to campaign in the face of adversity. So this is someone who believes so strongly in what they're doing that they have the confidence and the passion and the professional skills to deal with any of the challenges that are thrown at them. And because of this strong self-belief, they approach challenges and shifts in demand without loss of enthusiasm, and they have this very strong sense of self-assurance that enhances their motivation and commitment and encouragement in the work that they do. And then we have self-composure. So Oprah's a good example of this. She's very composed throughout all of the challenges that she's faced, remaining professional and turning those adversities into learnings. So this is about the ability to manage stress and remain calm under pressure. So those who have a high level of self-composure can deal with challenges rationally and without allowing their emotions to overtake them and drive their decisions. So self-composure is that ability to just respond very calmly and very methodically in the face of adversity. And then we have problem solving. So Elon's classic for this, as I said, failing fast. He has always looked at problems as opportunities, and that's generally what resilient people do. So this is the ability to plan and resolve problems efficiently and effectively. So those with a high degree of problem solving ability generate innovative solutions to problems, and they often take the time to gather relevant information and plan carefully and methodically and logically, and they also have a good degree of creativity to make those decisions. So goal orientation, I think it's fair to say that all of the examples I've given you are people who are very goal oriented. So this is the tendency to set goals and to really set your mind to something to achieve it. They'll tend to monitor their progress, and they'll kind of adjust their behaviour accordingly to make sure that they're working towards those goals. So those who are high goal oriented set really ambitious goals, and they tend to work really hard to achieve them, monitoring themselves, regulating themselves, making sure that they're adjusting things to make sure that they achieve what they really want to. So self-assurance, self-composure, problem solving, goal orientation are all ways of how we handle ourselves in terms of resilient attributes. So what about how we interact? Now, when I'm talking about interaction, I'm talking about how we communicate and connect with others. So courageous communication. You could argue that Harry is very courageous in his communication. He's not afraid to speak out. He's very candid. It's about the tendency to communicate with others in a very kind of courageous and candid way, even when things feel difficult or uncomfortable for us. So courageous communicators freely and effectively share their ideas with others. They'll ask questions that others might be afraid to ask. And they tend to confront problems directly, so they don't tend to sweep things under the carpet. They'll look at the problem, and they'll try to solve it and communicate with people to make sure that it's resolved appropriately. And this is particularly important when resolving relational conflicts and differences, and it allows people to move towards their goals, which is what we talked about in terms of the attributes earlier on. And then we have social support. So it's so vital that you have the right people around you who can support you in times of adversity. Certainly over the last 6 months, none of us could have predicted how COVID would have affected any of our lives. And certainly for me, I live alone, and I'm now obviously working alone. It's been really important for me to have a support network around me where I can call on people to make me laugh, a shoulder to cry on, to just kind of share those problems with. So it's really important that you create a network of people around you that you trust, attract your tribe. So like-minded, resilient people like you will be able to support you in difficult times. And that's really, really essential. And I think some of us are really bad at asking for help, but having that social support network is really vital. So courageous communication and social support are really vital to our communication and connection with others when we're thinking about resilience. So now that we've looked at those attributes of resilience, how can you now apply some of this to developing your own resilience and the resilience in others? So there are many reasons why building our own resilience is important. So there's a few thoughts I just want to share with you is that resilience, as I talked about earlier, is attributed to fewer absences at work. Also, there's a belief that nothing's insurmountable. When you develop your own resilience, you're able to deal with any challenges that come your way. Also, when you're more resilient, you tend to not turn to unhelpful behaviours like addiction, too much drinking, smoking, eating. I'm sure we've all done it. And also, employees with a greater level of resilience tend to get more involved in community and family activity, which is really good, again, for our well-being. So what are the steps that you can take to develop some of this for yourself and your team? So the first one is to focus on what you can control. I know this might sound obvious, but so many people tend to try and change things that they have absolutely no control or influence over. So it's really important that you think about your own circle of influence. So, for example, none of us have been able to control the pandemic. We've had our freedom taken away from us with lockdowns. And so it's thinking about those are the things that we can't do anything about. So, but what can we do? How can we choose to respond in the face of these very adverse circumstances? And how many of us have concerned ourselves with trying to control what another person says or does? As much as we'd like to, we can't actually control what other people do. So it's really important that we focus our energies in the right places. And next, managing your emotions before they manage you. So responsibility is a great word. It's about our ability to respond, which implies that we have a choice in terms of how we respond to things. We all experience setbacks, and none more so than in the last 6 months. So our ability to choose our emotional response to a problem is really powerful. And we all know those people who can sit in that victim space. And I know that I'm guilty of that at times. And it's about recognizing when someone is in that space, how you might be able to support them. So a couple of questions that you might want to use are, what was it that you did that contributed to this situation? So getting them to take a bit of ownership and responsibility. And also, knowing what you know now, what would you do differently next time? So focusing on the positives and changes ahead. And using this approach will help someone stop going down that kind of spiral of self-despair and pity. Next, it's really important to build and nurture supportive relationships. I talked about that earlier, about developing a network of close family and friends and colleagues to talk to. people that you trust to talk to with about your emotions, to be vulnerable with. It's not always easy, but it's very important to have that network of people around us. And it might sound obvious, but to have a positive outlook, I know we talked a little bit about the victim just a minute ago, but it's important to focus on what we do have. There's a lot of things around gratitude. You may have a gratitude journal, you may see lots of gratitude posts on Instagram, for example, but it's really important to think about the perspective in terms of how you're looking at things. So energy flows where intention goes. So it's always important to remember that. So if you're focusing on the positives and the stuff that you do have, rather than the things that you don't have, that's really going to help your mindset. And finally, breaking any recurring sabotaging thought patterns. So, for example, we talked about earlier the misuse of drugs, alcohol, overeating, undereating. All of these patterns are really unhelpful. So it's important to recognize when we're turning to those and thinking about other self-care alternatives. So you might decide that you're going to do a skincare routine, or you might decide to have a nice bath. Or you might decide that you're actually going to get up and go out and have a walk every lunchtime to help you to keep that kind of clarity and to do some self-care. So there's lots of different things that you can do to support yourselves and others. And I think it's important that we're just aware of when we are in that space where we are sabotaging ourselves and thinking, actually, how can we look at this differently? So as a result of what you've heard here today, again, I'd just like you to take a few moments to think about commitments to action. So thinking about some of the things that you've heard in this presentation, what actions are you going to take to develop your own resilience? So thinking about those energy levels, thinking about those attributes of resilience, what are you now going to do differently to develop your own resilience? And what are you now going to do to develop the resilience in your teams? So how can you support them? How can you recognize when they might be in that victim space? And how can you support them to kind of get out of that and to have a much more positive mindset? So just pause for a second and do some reflection. And I just want to end with a couple of quotes, really, as a bit of inspiration for you. This is a page with just some useful links on, particularly as the majority of us are still working at home, and it looks set to continue that way for quite some time to come. Your business may have decided to keep it that way in future. There's a really helpful article, and I'll put the links onto the comments section of this video. And then there's some other websites that you might find useful. And finally, if you have got any questions that have arisen as a result of this presentation, please do drop me a line. I'd love to hear from you. Very happy to support and answer any questions, or if you need pointing in the direction of any other resources. We've also got lots of resources on our website, so go and check out the website and our resources page. There's lots of blogs, podcasts, white papers, and some videos there as well. So I hope this has been useful, and wishing you all the very best in developing your resilient mindset.